button.
We go full screen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. As soon as you start coming in, we actually made the show start on time, which is a fucking miracle. YouTube hates when I start cussing within the first 20 seconds. So, I'll get this disclaimer out of the way so nobody gets their feelers hurt. But under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit educational or personal use tips to favor imbalance of fair use. So we're not infringing on copyright by having a show when we talk about things that we talk about. We are simply doing what that says and not breaking the rules. Yeah. Fucking gray area. I'll give you a gray area. I got one right here in my face.
Right here.
Yeah, you're getting some too. And we are fortunate and blessed to have Mr. Grant Bell here tonight again, everybody. It's good to see you, Grant. It's good to see you,
Max. Good to see you.
Before we were live, we were having a chat. We were talking about children and families and how things change as they grow older and develop, and those of you that have children understand the different phases and the different stages in which children evolve. You understand that a child is absolutely useless and can do nothing without somebody else doing it for them until they're at a certain age, and that can be anywhere from 18 years to God knows what if you have a raging dum-dum. So
it's where all this gray hair comes from.
Yeah, because like 2 weeks ago when we had Grant on, he had nothing but dark hair everywhere.
Yeah. You can look at pictures of me before the kids. This is all dark brown. 4 years later, I got a lot of gray.
I still wouldn't trade it for the world as much as I like to bitch about it and make fun of it. It's the greatest job I've ever had. So.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
It's got its moments. Don't get me wrong. The best advice I can give anybody, and I'm just saying, if you have anything that you want to accomplish in life, like if you want to, climb Everest, or if you want to, just do something really far out, you want to do the, Pacific Crest Trail or whatever, do it before you have kids. Otherwise, you may never get to it.
Yep.
I'm just saying, that's the way it works.
That's good advice.
And get as much sleep as humanly possible before the child gets here. And don't waste any time going to any bullshit classes, even if the wife demands it, because guess what? All that shit gets thrown out the window when you go to the hospital and they deliver the baby. There's not a lot of work involved. Trust me. Save the money, save the time, and don't get caught in that trap. I'm just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
We learned that after the first one. They were like, this is a fucking scam. And like, yep. This is what they were just doing that to us right there with the finger in the ass. They were fucking us. But we learned, trying to give tips and advice, help people out. Maybe not the tips and advice you were looking for, but sometimes the tips and advice that you need. So, Grant, You, my friend, were correct in our last meeting when it came to predicting the winners of the championship rounds. You had picked the Patriots and you had picked the Seahawks. I, with blind faith and hope in Matthew Stafford and the Rams with Sean McVay, picked the Rams and they didn't win. So, congratulations to you for being perfect on your first time predicting the outcome of the game.
50% of the time I can get it right. So, but there was only one of those that I really was happy about, which was obviously the Broncos not advancing to the Super Bowl. So that one made me happy. Although it was closer than I thought it would be. They held in there. They really did. So it was at least a good game.
It was a really good game. It was fun to watch. And, for the most part, the games were very entertaining.
Yep.
Though there were some things of hindsight is what they say it is. And you can go back and change things. Then I think there would have been a different outcome, at least in way of the call when it came to Denver and I forgot who caught the ball, but then it ended up being called an interception because he didn't come out with it. So, it might have been Brandon Cooks. I don't remember now.
There's something about also I'm sure it sucks for the players somewhat, and I don't necessarily want my ass in the fucking stadium, but I love watching games when it's just snowing and it looks like dead of winter, to me, that's just fun. It's extra fun to watch on TV is when you have that real football cold climate going on.
Yeah. And it turned from bad to worse in that condition. It was fun to watch because that's just like playing Madden. You're like, damn.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that. That was a great game. Great game. Great outcome from a Chiefs fan. So, yeah.
Sure.
No complaints there. So now we got set up, and I guess now it's just AFC versus NFC as far as I'm concerned.
Do you have a favorite in this one? Right now, from last I checked, and I was on last night for a little bit, Seattle is favored by 4.5. The over-under was 45.5, and the money line was going towards Seattle. What do you think?
Man, I think you're going to have it's a lot closer to Seattle being where it is. I don't know. I have to think about this one a little bit. It's a little bit closer in my head.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You have two teams. One team, you have a coach with experience and an ex-player as well who's seen what it takes and knows what it takes to win and get to a Super Bowl. He's a first-year coach for the same team that he actually won Super Bowls with, and a former Chief for a very short time, and that being Mike Vrabel. Now, the one thing that I don't know whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage is a second-year quarterback in Drake May. And historically, the North Carolina quarterbacks aren't known for their, let me just say two words, Mitchell Trubisky. So I underestimated Drake May significantly. And perhaps at the same time, the experience of Darnold, based on the fact that he's played for every team in the league and has been successful, even though he started out with the Jets, and that wasn't the best situation for anybody, and it never will be. I think that quarterback-wise, it's going to make a huge difference. Do you think that one quarterback has an advantage over the other one based on experience or based on momentum or a combination of both?
I feel like I want to give the talent nod to. I don't want to give the talent nod to Darnold. just ever so slightly. I'm going to give more of the talent nod to May. But May doesn't have as much, obviously, NFL experience, but he's got a coach that's got the experience and been there. That's why this one's difficult for me, man. If I'm going to give the nod, I guess I'm going to give it to the coach. So I'm still probably going to say Patriots. Because I think in those moments, coaching really is going to matter, and sure. I think it come down to coaching. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to give the edge, right? I could be wrong, but I'm going to give the edge. I'm going to give the edge to the Patriots there. But to me, it's a coin flip.
I think that this Super Bowl, and I say this very optimistically, is going to be as well as advertised. I think it's going to be a rematch from prior Super Bowl where obviously New England came out on top. But I think that there's a new generation, a new era of players that are more or less finishing what someone else has started. So I think that there's not necessarily a rivalry, but there's an incentive to be able to win this game, and doing so for not only revenge, retribution, if you will, in some cases, or just to even it up, if you will. And I agree with you. I think that experience makes a difference. And my only knock on Darnold is that I don't know whether or not he is going to be the same player that we've seen this year or last year, which was excellent for him as the quarterback from Minnesota. He did a wonderful job. And prior to that, he was with the 49ers and made it to a Super Bowl against the Chiefs, which they lost. Yep. He was, he was instrumental in a lot of ways, and he's developed in a lot of ways. He started out in a bad position, and anybody that goes to the Jets is in a bad position, period.
Yeah.
But in this case, he's got such talent around him with Smith and Jigba, not only a solid running game, though, he's going to have to rely heavy on that offensive line to give him time. Otherwise, that defense of New England isn't going to back off. And knowing Mike Vrabel, he's going to be aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So who are you giving it to?
I talked about this a little bit last night, but I wanted to get your take on it. If I go based on feeling and gut, I'm taking the Patriots.
Okay.
I'm taking the Patriots. I feel good about Coach Vrabel. I like their odds. I think that, they've got the momentum. Not to say anything bad about what Coach McDonald or Seattle's been able to do during the course of this year. It's amazing. It's incredible as far as the turnaround, et cetera. And I can say that for both sides. And honestly, I'm looking forward to this Super Bowl as much as I was watching the Chiefs, if that makes sense. Just because I think there's going to be such an interesting dynamic on how things are with the coaches, with the quarterbacks, the experience, lack of experience, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's going to be good. I'm excited to watch it. I think it's going to be a good game. I don't think there's any. I think this is a little bit different in the context also, as usually going into these games, college, pro, doesn't matter. Usually you get to this point and there's some kind of big hype player, right? So all they're going to talk about is Tom Brady, or all they're going to talk about is, Christian McCaffrey, whoever it is. There's that big hype guy. And I feel like both of these teams got here. Yeah, they got talent. And they got a couple like big weapons on each side, but I think that we're looking at the teams. The teams got them here. There's no like one or two star players that's like the whole reason. And if that guy's not there, that they're just going to be complete crap. So I think that you've got solid all around teams, and I think that that's going to produce what we hope to be is a really good game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think that a lot of people maybe because I got tired of watching the Chiefs being in a position to where they were either in the championship game or made the Super Bowl, and in 3 cases won the Super Bowl. Maybe it's recency bias. I don't know. But I think that this is a refreshing change, and I think that a lot of people are going to be tuned into it. It's going to be in San Fran. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Do you have any big plans for the big game?
Well, we got those kids you're talking about, so yeah, probably just watching it at home on my nice. I got a nice TV that I love, and I got it randomly on an impulse buy. So it was literally, was it maybe even the day of? It was the day before the day of. I think it was, I swear to God, it was the day of the Super Bowl where the Chiefs played the 49ers. And, I'm in the Charlotte area, and we have something, a few other areas have it, but we have something called a Best Buy outlet. The Best Buy outlet is where all the returns go into one. It was a Best Buy normal store, and they convert it to where it's just this big open floor full of their returns. Like one half is just nothing but appliances. The other half is TVs and electronics and all this other stuff. They're already discounted. And for some reason that day, they were running an additional 20% off of whatever it was. So I came across a 77-inch Sony OLED. And this thing was still in the box, perfect, had everything in it, and I scored that thing for $1,400. And if you know how much those things are, that was an incredible deal.
Sure.
So I was like, well, this couldn't be any better timing. I get to watch the Super Bowl on this nice thing right here. So I set that baby up, and I have enjoyed all my football experience on it since.
It's almost just like being at the game without freezing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. It's still good. So every football game has come to life since I bought that baby.
Have you been following any of the college basketball, KU?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I've had my questions about KU because, they have not been up to the production standard that I would say that KU should be at, especially in the new Big 12. So as an alum, that's kind of disappointing. I don't know exactly what it is. I can't say that it's necessarily NIL because KU has more money than just about any Big 12 school currently that's an active member. I don't know if Bill Self is having trouble adapting to this new world of NIL. I don't know if Bill Self's health problems have kind of toned him back from being able to have the type of intensity that he usually has. I think the guys are stepping up. I'm seeing improvement game over game, which I do like. But Daryl Peterson, man,
that's something special. I don't want to overhype him, but seeing Peterson play along with some other players, he's not the only one, but he definitely stands out amongst the crowd.
He does. He is an amazing talent, but you've got the combination of his health issues and the fact that I think that it's one of those issues, from what I've read, that his family will get involved and kind of say, okay, we're limiting him and we're time managing him down to max 20 minutes a game or something. So, I understand that the kid's talented enough to go right into the NBA, and I have no doubt about that. But, at the same time, if I'm an NBA scout and I'm like, you're pulling this shit at this level, I don't know if I want to deal with that when you're in the pros, right? So are you just all of a sudden not going to have any of these health problems, or those kinds of things are going to be concerning, even at the next level if it's a genuine issue. But something's got to be done at the NIL level for college to not say, hey, we're going to give you, here's $2 million, come play for us, right? Well, here's $2 million if you perform X to these standards, right? There needs to be more involved with these contracts. And I think it'll get there as it evolves to where it's like, this isn't free money just because you're on the roster, right? There's certain aspects of performance that you need to meet. There's certain amounts of play time that you need to meet. You can't just go run off and go to another school. Like, I think we're going to get there because people aren't going to just keep giving money away, right? But I hope it doesn't take too much longer. There's no reason for KU basketball to not be performing better than Iowa State, Nebraska, Jesus, who else? It's another big one. Houston. Any of these teams. KU.
Yeah. KU's just right out there as the outlier, seated at the 11 as far as national rankings go. And you're looking at, even though they beat BYU and they beat Texas Tech here in the last few days, they've got a lot of work to do. But to your point, as far as NIL goes, I think it's a good thing. And I say that simply because it allows them to not only continue and further their education to better themselves in case something were to happen, whether it be injury, whether it be illness, whatever the case may be, but it allows them to have something to fall back on in way of a career, of a trade, an education, etc. And I personally think it's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I just think that the concept of it, I think, is fair. I think that it just needs to be more tightly contained the way the NFL is, right? If you're going to start paying players and you start going to be semi-pro, then what comes along with that? Well, contractual obligations, performance, metrics that have to be met. There's a lot of contractual language that restricts what these players can and can't do and the performance that they have to meet, and right now NIL in college is still a little bit, it's the Wild West, so
sure.
As that starts to come ahead and there starts to become more understood and standardized rules around that, I think that everything is going to settle down, and it's like, okay, the players are going to get compensated, but they're also not going to be able to run wild and just hop to another school every other year just to get a bigger check.
I think that there should be a certain degree of loyalty as opposed to jumping from one school using the transfer portal because there might be more incentive over here versus over there. I think there needs to be a little bit of refinement to how they actually implement it. And, as they fine tune it, as it's still relatively new, as they fine tune it, they can probably work out the kinks to where it makes a lot more sense. And it doesn't seem like that same kind of free agency hustle that they have in the NBA, etc.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm seeing progress, but as far as KU basketball goes, I have pretty high expectations. So
absolutely.
There's no reason that I can have for those to not be met. So as long as I have no reason for those expectations to not be met, my expectations will continue to be high.
And there's absolutely 100% yes, because it is one of the greatest institutions, not only education wise, and you being an alumni from there could vouch for that, but in way of athletics go, the storied history, maybe not so much football, but in basketball, you're talking about Will Chamberlain. Will Chamberlain played for KU.
But going back to that alumni base, you have to understand also, like, what are we talking about? We're talking about alumni base that can help fund these NIL players, right?
Right.
So KU has a pretty wealthy alumni base. I think you're seeing, and the Big Ten has a huge, wealthy alumni base. The ACC does as well in some regards. That you're seeing the collapse in football in some regards of the SEC right now, right? And you say, well, why is that? Because they were so dominant for so long. Well, their dominance was predicated on the fact that there was no NIL. So everything came down to the game of recruiting, right? So if recruiting is the most important thing that you can do to be successful in college football before NIL, what do I do? Well, I have a nice, cozy media relationship and partnership with ESPN. Every high school kid is watching ESPN, constantly telling me how the SEC and Alabama or whoever is the greatest place to be for college football. And if you go there and you get under Nick Saban, you will go to the NFL, right? There's warm weather. There's all of this stuff. Why would you ever want to go to one of those cold, crappy Big Ten schools and go play for Purdue and nobody's going to know who the hell you are? Come to the SEC. It's akin to the NFL. It was a media push, right? You can draw a line at about 2005 of when that partnership started coming into fruition, and it continued that SEC dominance, right? They were throwing around terms like SEC speed. I remember hearing that all the time. Do you remember that? Mark May and Lou Holtz sitting around with Reese Davis and SEC this and SEC that and Kirk Herbstreit, SEC speed, when a guy would run. And I'm like, I didn't know the conference affiliation actually made you faster. I had no idea that was a thing. So if I was in an SEC school, all of a sudden I run faster. It's not the case. It's not.
No.
You're seeing it come down to what it really is. Now that NIL is involved, you're seeing a Big Ten resurgence, right? Why is that? Because they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Who's the richest guy in Alabama? I don't know, but he probably owns 3 or 4 Burger King franchises. I have no idea. But I bet the richest guy at the University of Michigan has a shitload more money than him. So
yeah.
Who's paying now? So this goes back to the other point. So if I'm an alumni at Alabama and I'm saying, well, why aren't we continuing this momentum? I have these expectations, but at least I also have the understanding, if I'm looking at it correctly, that I understand why it's going to be tough for us because we do not produce the alumni base that has the money to compete with these other schools that do have a lot of money in the Big Ten. You can only imagine how much USC has, Ohio State has, Michigan has. They all have a ton of money. They all have wealthy alumni bases. The SEC will start to come down to their rich alumni base, which is Texas. Them getting Texas was their money cash cow. The problem is Texas is a poison pill, and it's all going to start becoming about Texas.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah,
it was pre-planned. The way that if you look at it now with hindsight being 2020, you look at it and that was the big push. That was the reason primarily behind doing what they did and splitting things up and deciding to go different places. Not any different than Missouri leaving the Big 12 and going to the SEC to where they are as relevant as they were when they were still a part of the Big 12.
Oh, yeah. And I think you're seeing it. I mean, 25% of the SEC was the Big 12. You really got to think about it that way. So
True.
A quarter of that league was in the Big 12. And apparently, all of a sudden, now that they're all in the SEC, they're part of the SEC. They're just as great as all the SEC. No. Texas A&M was a bottom feeder in the Big 12, and so was Missouri most of it. I mean, they had a couple flashes under Pinkel, just like KU did under Mangino.
Yeah.
I was never scared to go play A&M. Right? There were 3 teams in the Big 12 that you really had to worry about. When they were good, it was Nebraska. Oklahoma dominated that league.
Yep.
Texas tried to dominate that league. And that was pretty much it. And you'd have a flash here from K-State or a flash there from Colorado, but really that was who ran the league. And every league had your big two teams, right? So the Big 12 had Oklahoma and Texas, sometimes Nebraska, especially when it was the Big 8. The Big 10 always had Ohio State and Michigan. You know, the SEC was Alabama, and generally, if you wanted to throw one in there historically, I guess you would maybe say
LSU.
LSU probably. But, I mean, that was a pretty dominated by Alabama league. You know, just like the Pac-10, Pac-12, it was USC all day, you know, and it would come down to Oregon, but Oregon never did anything. I think historically you would say Washington was better than Oregon. But, you know, it's just funny how it's all changed. The landscape is completely different, which is good and bad, you know, because college football is really based on a lot of tradition, and a lot of that has been stomped on and thrown out the window. So it's just a new landscape. It's a new world. There's good about it. There's bad about it. But all I can hope for is that there's still parity, because the one thing that has helped, in my opinion, make college basketball still very fun to watch is, especially forever, actually, but it's still continuing today. If I say, okay, most of the time, I say, okay, who's going to win? Who's going to make it to the Final Four? I can have an idea, but every year you really don't know. You know, I didn't know I didn't know Arizona was going to be fucking killing people. I didn't know that Michigan was going to be up there. You don't know.
Right. But Arizona's still undefeated.
They're still undefeated. But that's what makes it fun. You get all these guys in the big dance and you just say, all right, we'll see what fucking happens, right? College football, especially during that little SEC run, it was getting to the point where it was like, why are we even playing the fucking games? We know who's going to be in the top two and who's probably going to go to the national championship. Like, it took the fun out of it almost, right?
I got tired of watching Alabama, Clemson, LSU. It was always just, you know, the same old guys.
It was. And it was starting to get old. So I'm enjoying the parody. I'm enjoying, like, who the fuck would have thought Indiana would win a national championship this year? That's their first one. They never won shit.
After Oklahoma or Ohio State was dominant all season long.
Oh, yeah. And I'm a big Ohio State fan. And, you know, when they lost to Michigan last year, and, you know, I follow some more of the, like, non-super public stuff, that they had a big fucking team meeting where they let it all out after that Michigan loss. And it was kind of like, okay, we're going to see, like, what are you made of? And whatever happened went the right way, because god damn, the second Tennessee walked into that stadium, they just started getting their shit pushed in. And it was that way for 4 quarters. And watching all those idiots run out, pulling their shirts off, saying they're not afraid of the cold, and dancing around looking like idiots, and they're just getting absolutely shit rocked. I mean, I loved it. It was entertaining, but I'm like, okay, I mean, they were out here to prove a point, and then they did it again, and then they did it again, and it was like, okay, I mean, that was not a team you were going to stop. And that to me was fun to watch. That was a lot of fun to watch, not only as an Ohio State fan, but it was just like, okay, you kind of counted them out because you watched them play Michigan, and you're like, god damn, Michigan sucks this year, and they're not playing well, right? And, you know, then you got this year, and it's like, okay, Indiana just played a bunch of cupcakes. They don't mean shit. It's all fake, you know. And then you start towards the end of the year, you're like, no, they're fucking legit. They're pushing people around, and it is a solid, well-rounded team. They're not relying on like 1 or 2 dudes to like make this shit happen. Like, that team is well coached. again, they're drawing parallels. They're like, this guy reminds us of Nick Saban, you know, the way he disciplines, the way he's like, they're up by 20. He's still not smiling. He's not fucking around. This guy is like,
You better quit playing with me. Rawr.
I just think that's so fun to watch now. So hopefully it keeps going. Hopefully we keep getting this. I mean, I don't know who it's going to be next year. That's the best part. I have no idea who the hell is going to make it to the national championship in college football next year. I have no clue.
No. The way that it's set up now, it's really, it's a toss-up. You just don't know because it's that unpredictable, and that unpredictability is both exciting and frustrating at the same time. And I think a lot of it goes back to what you said earlier in regards to the NIL. If you begin to poach certain players and incentivize them to come to your school, then I mean I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, but it waters down the loyalty. At the same time, it degrades what it is ideally meant for, to keep you in school, allow you to get paid and get an education and have something to fall back on, as opposed to you get hurt before you even make it into the pros. And now what? You were good at football. You were good at basketball. What's that going to get you other than maybe a podcast?
Yeah. Shit. It's a new world, man. It is a new world, but I like the fact that I can't sit here at the beginning of the year and predict, and that's all I want. I mean, if you're going to go to the money route, then you better start making it close to a structure of the NFL. I think they got that with the playoff to some extent. There's automatic bids. I think that's going to continue to change and get tweaked a little bit, but just like the NFL, like the thing that still some people think it's fun, which it is, but it will continue to have people bitching and complaining, and I understand why, is how you are perceived and how a bunch of assholes in the media vote you in, or a committee of assholes, still has a lot of influence on whether you get into that playoff. What Smith thinks has nothing to do with if somebody gets in the playoffs in the NFL. They can talk whatever they want. There's no voting committee getting anybody into the NFL playoffs. It's just, your job is to win your fucking division.
The thing about the NFL, and I'm glad you mentioned this, and in the NFL, specifically the NFL, they care about the ratings. They have a lot of commitments to uphold that they signed off on to get these TV deals. So the thing about the NFL is, and it's not just the NFL, it's all sports. There's no such thing as a clean sport unless it's being played one-on-one, and if there's a absolute if there's an actual non-biased party, which is almost impossible to find, you're not going to have the result that you necessarily expect, because there's so many variables out of your control. What the referee is going to call, what the referee sees, etc. And like I said, it's bad for the game. Sometimes you just got to swallow the whistle, stick your head in the sand, and let them play.
Yeah. And that in the NFL has more bearing than it does in college. And that's kind of the part that I think is, from a technical standpoint, a lot of people interpret as a problem. So if I'm Indiana and I start out unranked and I go undefeated, I might get lucky enough to get into the top 5, right? But if I already start out in the top 5 at the beginning of the year, with the preseason rankings, I've already got a leg up on everybody else below me.
Yeah.
Even if I maybe lose a game. So that ranking system automatically favors teams over other teams, and they haven't even played a game yet. and it actually matters for you getting in the playoff. So that also goes into, well, your brand matters, your style points matter. It doesn't matter in the NFL if I beat a fucking team by 1 or 2 points or a field goal at the end of the game. It does matter in college football if I lose a bunch of games or win a bunch of games by 1 or 2 points, or if I beat them by fucking 50. That actually matters. So it's a different game. And I think that the more that you can take the human nuance and committee bullshit out of it, I think the better.
I think you're right. I can't disagree with that at all. There's nothing but truth in what you said, but you got the one factor that is going to control the narrative of every situation in any sport, that being money. And
Yep.
The more people are allowed the opportunity to gamble, to wager bets, to do prop bets, etc., it does nothing in way of propping the game up or making it any better. What it does is take advantage of people that may not fully understand what they're betting on, how to place a proper bet, or realizing that they can't afford to gamble.
Yeah. All true.
I mean, I know guys, and I'm sure you do too, that they don't care about as much the game as they do what they have invested in the game, whether it be a prop bet, whether it be on the money line, over under, whether it be any of the above. They won't even watch the game. They're just watching their phone, making sure they're making money. And I think that, that's not the way it should be. When the money is more important than the actual event, there's a bit of a problem with that.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm a little bit unique in the fact in the modern age where I don't mess with FanDuel. I don't do any of the betting.
No.
I don't do any of that.
No. And it's not because, it's different. Like if we were betting against one another, predicting one thing, I was right, you were wrong, that's one thing. But when you take actual financial losses that you may not be able to afford, and then you make the bigger mistake of trying to recoup and chase those losses, you just sink yourself into a deeper ditch. And at that point in time, in this day and age, that's not what you want to do. That's the absolute opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, if I got $500 to burn or something like that, I got other stuff I can spend it on other than gambling it on a football game that if I care enough, it's already stressful enough. I don't need to put my money in it to make it even more stressful, right?
Right, because you're tuned in to whatever team it is or whatever game it is, and you're invested in it to where you're watching that and you want your team to win. And if they're not, it does cause a bit, causes a bit of stress and anxiety because you don't want to lose.
No.
Nobody wants to lose.
Nobody wants to lose. No.
And while we're at this real quick, let me pivot to something else briefly. You are well versed in all things when it comes to technology, whether it be vintage technology, whether it be modern technology, and the same goes for your experience in automotive, specifically European vehicles, and even more specific, the BMW.
Yeah.
Tell me the vintage tech that I was able, with your permission, to upload on my channel.
Yeah.
People found it very interesting. The MCA sound card and the old IBM and PlayStation 2, the videos that you made on that had a lot of response. People are very interested in the older tech and the vintage tech. What can you tell me about what's going on and how that vintage tech is making a resurgence simply because it is more valuable now than it was when it initially came out?
So that's a great question. And there's a lot there to unpack, right? So
Sure.
I'll hit on a few points. One is nostalgia, right? We're getting to the point to where nostalgia is hitting us, right? We have memories of these things as kids or teenagers or whatever, and we interacted with those things, and they were around us at that stage in our life, just like anybody else. Our parents may have like, you know what? Oh God, I remember my turntable and all this other stuff, and I had this badass sound system. Or, you know, my parents were really nostalgic for like 60s Mustangs and stuff like that. Like that nostalgia hits you at a certain point, and then you yearn to get it back, right? And I think that we were the first generation, you know, millennials, Gen X, where we were exposed to a new level of technology that was in our face, right? So we had Nintendos, we had desktop computers coming our way that, you know, normal people had. The internet was coming around. Like all of this stuff was changing and becoming available, right? So there's a nostalgia factor of like, oh, you know, it'd be kind of cool to have that. I'd like to mess with that again, or see that again, or play that game on that computer again. And it's not just to where you can go on your modern computer or something, or I can go emulate and play, you know, Mario Kart or something on a new piece of technology, right? There's something about actually using and touching that old piece of hardware. The noises that it made, the way that you used it, the look, the smell, the feel, everything brings back that memory, right? So there's something about having that actual hardware.
And let me just ask you this: in way of its output, we're looking at primarily 8-bit, 16-bit, very low in comparison today in standards as far as what it actually visually is compared to like what you see on a PlayStation 5 or a PC game.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're not even in the same ballpark, right? Like that computer right there is 25 megahertz, right?
Which in this day and age would be laughable.
It's laughable. It has 40 megabytes of RAM. It has a 230 megabyte hard drive. Okay, so there are devices that you can find on Amazon for $5 that probably have more computing power than that thing over there does, right? So, but it's still interesting because you're seeing what something with that low of technical spec can still do even today, right? I mean, I can still type on that thing. I got that thing connected to the internet. I can still play games on that thing. You're doing all of this stuff that it's like, yeah, it's old. Yeah, it's slow, but it still does all those things. But I'm not trying to do any real work on it. I'm just trying to bring back that memory of stuff that you actually interacted with.
Sure.
I think the other piece is that computer is from 92, 93. The IBM I have over here is from about 1990, 91, 92, same era, right? When those things were 5, 6, 7 years old, when it's 98, 99, 2000, everybody is looking at these things like they are, and they weren't, slow pieces of crap. What did they do? They threw them away.
Until the next new thing came out.
And then now you're looking at it, and you're like, there's nothing left. They all got recycled. They're all gone. There's nothing, all those pieces of junk. That's the other thing. CRT TVs. You can't find them anymore, barely. You can't find working VCRs. Like all of this stuff is dead or thrown away. It's in landfills. It's gone. So the prices are going up because you can't find them, and you really can't find them in good shape.
No.
Another piece is, if you could go back to that time, in 1992, in $1992, that was about all together, monitor, computer, keyboard, all that shit, was probably a roughly $3,000 or $4,000 system.
Yeah.
Okay. In $92. What is that today?
With inflation, you figure 300%. You're looking about
10 grand.
Yeah, 12 grand easy.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were using that back in the day, and especially when you were a kid, any little upgrade, any little thing you wanted to do, games were still expensive. You always felt like, man, it would be cool to do this, but I just don't have the money. My parents aren't going to buy it for me. So now that you're an adult and you have a little bit of money and you want to experience that again, it's actually fun to go on eBay or wherever and be like, there's that component or there's that game I always wanted. And now that I got the money to buy it, I'm giving the fucking middle finger to 1992 and I'm gonna get it, right? And that's kind of how it is a little bit too. It's like, oh, now I can pimp Mac Daddy this thing out and get all the shit to make it the coolest system that it would have ever been back then, that I would have been happy as hell to play Duke Nukem on or whatever it was. And you're just having a blast. It's the same thing. I've got an entire retro loft that I've set up, and I've got a CRT, Sony TV, the VCR. I've got a regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, a Sega Genesis, N64. I completely maxed out a PlayStation 2. That thing is freaking awesome because I got the hard drive edition in there and I loaded all the games on the hard drive, so I don't even have to pop a disc in it and it'll just play any game that I put on there on original hardware. It's just fun. It's cool. It's interesting. And I think people really get into it. And there's a lot of history there because it was the changing of and evolving. You know, you were bringing up the IBM, the MCA, right?
Mm-hmm.
The MCA was the architecture that those PS2 IBMs used, right?
Yes.
So that goes back into the history of the original IBM PC, right? That thing was basically built with off-the-shelf parts.
History-wise, yeah, it was kind of just thrown together.
Yeah. So Compaq and all these other companies were like, well, I'm just going to make a clone. And that's where the IBM clone came from, right? That was seriously cutting into their fucking market share big time. So what did IBM do? IBM said, okay, we're going to come out with a new computer, and this is PS2, and it was proprietary. They could not copy it because it was all patented and copyrighted, everything. So that was called MCA, microchannel architecture, right? Well, the problem was there were some pretty big royalties that any company that made anything to work with MCA had to pay. And they were like, well, fuck you. I'm not going to pay that. I can make it for Compaq and everybody else for free. And I don't have to pay a royalty. So that further tanked IBM to where they had to go back to the original platform and the PS2s all died. So there's a small subset of folks that remember those IBMs in the PS2 era that I had. And the reason that was for me is because that's the first computer I ever had. Because when I was in 6th grade, for Christmas, my dad brought that from work because they were decommissioning them and they gave it to him. And that was the first one I had to play around and work with and had on the internet, had the dial-up modem and all that other stuff. So...
And in this day and age, it's very highly sought after stuff simply because it's obsolete and nobody's making it. You can't necessarily go retroactive and create it unless you have things to do it with. So it's sought after because it's nostalgic, like you said. It's relatively simple and it's super cool.
Yeah, and the interest you've had on those videos to that point. So you remember back in the day, if for the old computers, if you wanted sound, you had to have a sound card, right?
Yep. Sound Blaster. Yep.
Sound Blaster. Perfect one. So Sound Blaster, Creative made a Sound Blaster for the IBM PS2, but they didn't make very many of them. And the ones that are still surviving consistently go for $1,000 to $2,000 on eBay just for the card.
Just for the card. Now, we're not talking about the Sound Blaster Pro. We're talking about just a Sound Blaster.
Sound Blaster. You find a Pro, it's probably even more.
Yeah.
So that demand was so high that people have taken it upon themselves to clone these cards and recreate them and then sell them for $90. that drop in and use the old creative drivers. And now you can actually have sound coming out of your computer that was what they call unobtainium back then, and even today, because nobody's going to drop $1,000, $2,000 on a sound card for a computer that's, so that kind of revives the interest in this stuff. And that's why I made that video, because it was the first big company that had made that clone and made it at a price and a quantity that anybody who's interested in this could buy. And it was just like a complete game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, it was ahead of its time, and it was something that was, in many ways, a blueprint of what we have today in the modern tech, if you want to call it that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the computers are fun. The video games are fun. The video games and the consoles are interesting and fun. I've got a 100% hit rate on those things. I buy them broken on eBay. I've been able to repair every single one. Some of them didn't even need repair. They just needed cleaned up. Got those things for $15-$20 because you can still find those everywhere. But then you got to try to find like the perfect one. Like, you were a big Sega guy, right?
Yes.
Well, they made like 3 versions of the Genesis.
Yes.
Well, even of those 3 versions, there were versions of those versions. So I made sure and hunted down the one that has, quote, the best audio, that had the best sound output. And that was the one that had the circle on it, the Gen 1 on the top, that looked like, I remember as a kid, I was like, whoa, I wonder if there's a version you could put a CD-ROM in there, because it had the round circle on the top. I mean, it never did, but had the little volume switch on the front.
From the Sega, the Genesis, they had the Dreamcast after, and
the Saturn in there. Yeah,
they did have the Saturn. So they evolved, but they really didn't evolve, if that makes sense. They switched and did things differently, but you didn't necessarily have a higher quality product in way of what you're able to, its output. It's improved, but it's not anything close to what you see nowadays.
Yep. And they, during that time, those console wars, Sony came in with a vengeance, man, and they just kicked the shit out of everybody pretty hard, even the King Nintendo. So
they did.
Yeah.
And I've got a Series X, and I've got a PS5. I don't do a whole lot of gaming, but I do every once in a while. I like to play, and they're fun. But at the same time, I probably enjoy playing my old Atari just as much as anything else.
Now, when you were a kid, you probably did. I mean, what were you playing? Were you playing Sega? You were playing Master System? You were playing
I had the Sega Master System. I had the Atari, the Sega. Those were the 2 big ones that were out. I had an Apple IIe. I had an Apple IIc.
Yeah. That original Oregon Trail and shit.
Oregon Trail, Hangman. They had all kinds of just, man, there was just a lot of just goofy little games, but they were really fun to play. They were simple. They kept you entertained, and there was nothing malicious about them. There wasn't anything like what you see now, of course, but they weren't designed to be that way.
Yeah.
They were designed to be, I don't want to say family friendly, but they were very G-rated.
Yeah. There wasn't anything. I mean, you didn't have the graphics or the capability to do anything that made them like, Resident Evil or something that it is today. But, if you had one of those now and it was sitting right there and somebody set it up for you, one of those Apple IIs or that Atari or Master System, I guarantee it, and it's original hardware, it's the real stuff, you would get that nostalgia hit right in your face, and you would just be like, damn, this takes me back. I want to order some pizza and have a sleepover right here and just like hang out,
That's it. Eat a little bit of this, maybe smoke a little bit of that, who knows. But yeah. I would definitely enjoy myself.
Oh yeah. So that's just kind of the hobby. That's the technology. That's, I've got my collection pretty good. which I guess is good and bad because now you've kind of like, all right, what's next? You know, you get it built up to where you want it, and then you're like, okay, what now? You know, I'm always on to the next thing, right?
Right. And you keep yourself busy, like I said, between your knowledge of not only current and vintage technology, your knowledge and understanding of automotive, in particular the European, the BMW, and you are pretty much a whiz at small engine at the same time. And, you know, you like tools, I like tools. A lot of people like tools. A lot of people spend a lot of money on tools. Do you think that the money that people spend on, let's say, a Milwaukee is worth it as opposed to spending less money on getting a Bauer if you only use it a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 times a year?
Um, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on.
Let's call it. Let's go a consumer, a prosumer, and a DIY guy. And we can actually go a pro, a DIY guy, and a prosumer, a guy that can basically, he's a professional, he's got the skill, he's got the talent, he's got the tools, he knows what he's doing, he's got the equipment, versus a DIY guy that's kind of figuring it out and you're professional. Do you think that there's going to necessarily be a best tool or a best brand that one should buy into if you're doing things mildly in a DIY type of setting?
Yeah, if I was even pro or prosumer, I'd probably suggest going on the Milwaukee train, just because I feel like it's got a really good balance of price to performance ratio. If I'm somebody that just needs to go run and get something, and I might use it once or twice a year, or maybe once every 5 years or something, I'd still honestly probably go for like Ryobi. I feel like they have I think it's a pretty good price to performance ratio for that end user, right? Because you have a lot of consumer goodies that are in that system that your average homeowner would probably enjoy. Like, oh, I got a big fan here for my kids, or I got a radio that connects to this, or it's a little air pump for their toys or my tires, but I could also use it for my drill and my other stuff. You could tell they focus heavily on that market. I mean, I think they make vacuums and stuff. They make all kinds of shit. I can't even keep up with the stuff that Ryobi comes out with. So
they've got everything from a 4-volt system to their 18-volt system, and they've had that same battery, that chimney stack battery since '96.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you could use the old blue color ones with the new battery, or the old battery with the new stuff. You can do whatever you want. It's very versatile. I personally like the Ryobi. I don't have anything bad to say about it as far as TTI goes. Obviously, it's not the top of the line, but if you get the brushless versions of the Ryobi tools, you're not getting anything that's going to be lesser quality than you would if you get a brushless Milwaukee or a DeWalt or a Rigid, etc.
Yeah, they're not too different. Have you ever watched a guy, AVE?
It sounds real familiar. I know one guy tests.
He's a Canadian guy. Yeah, you're probably thinking of Project Farm. AVE is a guy, he'll actually take these tools apart and he'll look at the plastic moldings and the type of plastic that they're made out of and the construction and stuff. And like, so you might have a brushless Ryobi and then a brushless Milwaukee, but the amount of fiberglass that they put into the plastic to have rigidity and strength is actually higher in the higher end tools. So it creates that rigidity, and there's less so of that in like a Ryobi or some of the other tools. So there are small differences there. The gauge of wire might be a little bit different. Some other little nuancy things, but all in all, is that something that the average person is going to notice? Not particularly. They just want it to do the job and they don't want it to break their wallet. But I like, if you're running a shop or you're a serious prosumer, I can't sit here and say, yeah, you should go get Ryobi, and I understand there's loyalties, if somebody was like, well, I hate TTI shit, okay, we'll go get DeWalt, and if you're a light consumer guy and you just need to use it once on the weekend, once a year or something, okay, go get a Craftsman or a Porter Cable or some other crap like that. It's still going to serve your purpose. I think my issue with DeWalt has always been that brand schema always has really good high-end stuff, but they also sell crap under the DeWalt name. And I think that's been their problem with their brand. It's not that there's anything inherently bad with DeWalt, but I can get a DeWalt that's just as crappy as a Craftsman.
Sure.
I can't really get a Milwaukee that's just as crappy as, a Craftsman. Because they separated that line out to where they only sell that level of stuff under Ryobi.
Right. And what people don't understand, I know you understand this, that even though they're all under the TTI umbrella, Ryobi has their own division, Milwaukee has their own division, Rigid has their own division, Hoover has their own division. They're all under the same umbrella, but they all have their own R&D, etc. So though they are similar, they don't necessarily offer all the exact same things. One good example is, and I'll use TTI, they've got a right angle impact in 3/8 and 1/2 inch. Rigid also has it, but if you go over to SBD, they don't have anything like that.
Yeah, but if that takes off, I guarantee they'll make something.
I used them for doing small engine, taking blades off, etc., and they work perfect. And they were all on the M12, not the M18 system. And I have nothing bad to say about either one. I think they both work great, whether they're brushed, whether they're brushless. If you had the Fuel or the Red Key or the Link, whatever you have, Milwaukee puts out a quality product. But I will say this, up until probably about 2013, 2014, you really didn't see anybody with Milwaukee stuff in the shop.
Not really. And I think that was because Milwaukee at that time, they just weren't a focus. Like they were kind of your old granddad's tools, right?
Right.
They also, and they didn't have like a good concrete battery system. I think there was a lot of tool disarray before 2000, 2005. I think Ryobi actually set the pace and set the market standard for saying, hey, if you want it to be successful, you got to pick a fucking battery and stick with it. Because
more or less, yeah.
If you change these battery styles, nobody's going to commit to your fucking product.
No.
And I think even though maybe the chimney stack is kind of old and outdated and it makes the hand grip a little bit thicker than people would mostly like, the fact that they have stuck with it and not fucked with it has grown their user base tremendously because they have not dicked with it. And I think a lot of other tool companies have understood, yeah, we need to not mess with the battery interface because we can upgrade the batteries, you can have bigger batteries, but the way that it connects to the tool, you need to fucking make sure that you do not dick with that.
I agree with you 100%. And for me, the old Ryobi is the funnest one because the way the chimney stack is, I take the tool, I go, and I'm done.
Yep.
I don't go, I can't do that with a regular tool.
Yeah. The other thing is, back in those days, those tool companies had a trade focus. So the trade focus for Milwaukee was electricians.
Yep.
The trade focus for Rigid, and still is today, is plumbing.
Yeah.
So they kind of had that trade focus, and then when they started branching out and saying, okay, we need a tier of tools, and they're all under the TTI flag, they're going to say, okay, well, we need a top tier, a mid tier, and a low tier.
Sure. Good, better, best.
Yeah. So they're just taking like anybody else. Like I got Cadillac, Oldsmobile, and Chevy, you know, and you buy what's the best or what fits what you do. And instead of focusing on, okay, this is just for the electrician trade, we're just saying, okay, we're going to branch out these tools. They're just going to be our upper tier and they're not specific to any trade. And I think they found a really good niche with pushing a lot of tools for automotive technicians, because
Yes.
I think that was a market that was sorely neglected because everybody kind of thought, well, tool trucks have that world. We're not going to be able to penetrate it and not looked at as, oh, it's junk, right? But I think that when people started figuring out, wait a minute, snap-on wrenches and ratchets are not the same as snap-on power tools. They're just as junky as anything else. That why am I going to pay $1,000 for a snap-on impact when I can get one that's probably actually better from Milwaukee for $300?
And to go back to Snap-on, they had electric tools. They've had them for a while. When they came out with their earlier stuff in the early 2000s, they still had NiCads on them, 1/2 inch, 3/8. They had all that stuff, but they weren't great by any means. The battery life was garbage. They'd slow down on you. As the battery wore out, the battery did not last anywhere near as it should. I mean, compared to now, you know, Milwaukee, DeWalt, and I don't like to say anything bad about Snap-on, but the price point for somebody that's going to spend money to buy Snap-on, you're wasting money just for the name. That's just a fact.
Especially with your cordless power tools, you know, especially with that, because like if you see Tool Test, if you see any of these guys, Torque Test Channel, Project Farm, it doesn't matter. Most of the time when you're testing ratchets, wrenches, sockets, any of this stuff, Snap-on is always at the top or near the top every single time, right? They're really expensive, but if you're going in and you're like, okay, this is going to be a tool that I'm going to use the rest of my life. This is a tool that I rely on to put food on the table. This is a tool I want to hand down. It's generational, quote unquote. You can get a Snap-on and know it's probably going to be the best or the top 3 of anything in its category, right? I'm going to pay for it. If I get a cordless impact and I pay that Snap-on price, number one, most cordless power tools are not generational anyway. Number two, I don't think anybody can sit here and say that a cordless impact from Snap-on is any better than a cordless impact from Milwaukee or anybody else. They're just not.
No.
But the price would have you think that there's got to be something special here because it's fucking 3 or 4 times the amount.
And that's the misconception that people have. They think that if something is more expensive or has better specs, it makes it a better tool, and that's not the case.
Yeah, not really. And I haven't seen any performance tests that show that a Snap-on cordless tool is any better than the Milwaukee's, the DeWalt's, or any of that other stuff. I have not seen any of it. Now, if Snap-on was doing something like they were taking Hilti shit and rebranding it, that's a different story, but that's not what they're doing.
No.
So that nobody sees the value there. There's no value. So, and I think that Milwaukee and some of these other guys were really smart by getting into that market and just basically kicking the shit out of them.
And Milwaukee does make the electric power tools for Matco. They've been under contract now for a little while. So if you're buying a Matco Infinium electric cordless tool, you're actually buying a Milwaukee tool that was designed and made for Matco by Milwaukee.
Yeah. And if I were Snap-on and I wanted to try to say, you know what, that's not a bad business plan, maybe they need to look into fucking working with Hilti or some other really high-end tool brand to at least justify the price that they're trying to charge, because their own in-house design shit that they're speccing out and having built for them, I mean, it's fine, but it's not worth what they're asking.
Absolutely not. I've had more issues when I was still turning a wrench buying Snap-on. I would have more warranty issues, then I would have good things to say about them. And it's not that they are a bad tool or I was misusing it, but when I compared it to the other tools that I had in my arsenal, it wasn't any better. It was probably subpar to a lot of the Milwaukee and the Makita, not Makita, but Matco, and even the DeWalt stuff that I was working with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think on that front, something's got to change for Snap-on. But
and there's guys out there that want nothing to do with anything but Snap-on. They're that dedicated to the brand that if it's got Snap-on, that's all they buy. Same thing for Matco, Cornwell, Mac, whatever it is. There are guys and gals out there that are super dedicated, and that's up to them. They got the money to spend on that. That's great. If not, there are always other options that may be better, maybe less money, and do just as fine.
Yeah. And I understand the dedication, the brand loyalty. I think it's inherent to everybody. You know, somebody's an Apple guy, somebody's a Nintendo
Android, yeah, sure.
person. You know, I get it. You know, it's just the way things are. I guess I try to at least split it out and say, okay, well, I'm not a dedicated Snap-on person, but I try to dedicate to, okay, what is that company the best at, right?
Screwdrivers.
Who do they provide the best value? So I might have, okay, the best value, the best wrenches and the best ratchets and stuff that I really like are Snap-on, right? I really do like them. That doesn't mean I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of other Snap-on stuff like their cordless power tools. That I got Milwaukee, right?
Because you know they're tried and true. You know exactly what you're getting.
Absolutely. And I might go into another brand for, you know, for like my bench grinders and stuff like that. I search out and I find old Craftsman stuff, the old made in USA from like the 60s and 70s and shit, because I know that stuff is going to work. It's going to work forever. And all it needs to do is spin.
And that's another thing people have a misconception about. Now, you know, I'll say this. Brush tools are still very relevant. If you have a tool and it's corded and you plug it into the wall, I guarantee you 90% of the time, with very few exceptions, that tool is brushed. So as far as brushed versus brushless, the difference being a brushless tool that is cordless is going to require more demand of power. That's why the battery and the battery technology is paramount to them being better. You could use a brushless tool that is also cordless, but it will not necessarily perform the same, last as long, or do as good of a job, but it is just fine. Brush tools are here to stay. If it's got a cord, they're brushed, I promise you.
Yep. And I seek that sit on the bench, plug in shit. I seek out old 50s, 60s, 70s, solid made in America, heavy duty shit that I know that, you know, I go through it, I clean it up, I get it up, and I put new brush wheels on it and everything. I know it's good for as long as I'm going to keep using it.
Yeah, and it's people think it's like rocket science or surgery. Replacing the brushes is not a hard thing to do.
No, it is not.
Or even putting in a whole new brushless motor. They're not difficult. It's a whole lot less expensive than having to buy a new tool when you could repair the one you have and it works, does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah. No, you're right. So I try to say, okay, well, who's the best in their field, and then I'm going to try to be loyal to that, right? You know, like I drive a Ford truck. I think F-150s for that class of truck right now are the best, right? It doesn't mean if I want a convertible, I'm going to go out and buy a Ford convertible. Like, there's different things that I feel like they do the best at this or that, and I try to say, okay, because I'm spending my money, right? This is something I'm getting for me. Whatever it is working for me, right?
Sure.
So I want you to do the best job for me. I want you to be the best truck for me. I want you to be the best wrench for me. You work for me. I paid for you, so I expect you to perform up to the standard that I have, not necessarily just because of the brand loyalty or I think it's cool or, it's the easiest. It's like, I expect you to do a job, whatever that job is. You work for me. I want to make sure that you live up to that standard.
Absolutely. I'd rather have you under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver. And then we're both not going to be in a situation where we're pleased with one another.
Yeah, 100%. So that applies to tools, technology, cars, all of it,
Even people. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. So, and with that comes along, I think that it's good that we have channels like this and YouTube and everything where we can say like, okay, well, I'm interested in getting this. What is going to do the best job for me? I can now go on and I can have people who have tested these products against each other. They can give their input and they can deep dive into this stuff to help me make that decision so that I don't go and buy something. I'm like, oh shit, I wish I wouldn't. I don't like having buyer's remorse. I fucking hate it.
And a lot of people do. And maybe it's because they saw a video where a guy's got a little impact and he's got a 12-inch lag bolt and he's running it down. And no. And that's where, the Torque Test channel and all those guys like that, they do good things. I'm not saying anything bad about that. But realistically, using tools in the field, depending on what field you're in, what tool you need, how it's going to perform, and generally you're going to stick with it.
Yeah. So I just, you got to be careful about those guys. They all have their own interests, and you got to understand what you're looking at. But I'm just grateful that I have the ability to do that kind of research and say like, well, without me spending my money, you already spent all this money on these 10 impact guns, and now I get to see how they perform. I may not agree with your conclusion, but at least I get to see for what's most important to me where they stand.
Sure. And I like brand loyalty just as much as anybody else, but I also feel that there is, I don't want to say necessarily a need, but there is nothing wrong with diversifying and branching out and trying other things as long as you have a use for it. If I find something that isn't made by DeWalt or Ryobi and Milwaukee has it, I'm going to buy that Milwaukee product. And I'll give you another great example: 1/4-inch anvil or hog ring pin detent impacts. I love 1/4-inch impacts, not hex drive, but actual pin detent or anvil on the hog ring. So Milwaukee, short of Snap-on, Matco, etc., they're the only ones that have it. So that product in itself is going to entice me to want to go ahead and get that line, because those are the tools that I know I'm going to use and will use consistently. So
have you seen that new super compact stubby impact from Milwaukee that's 1/4-inch?
Is it the Surge?
I don't think it's a Surge, no. It's got flat sides on the barrel and it's really compact, and they've got it in 3/8 and 1/4-inch.
Really?
Yeah, you might want to check that out. I think it's either coming soon or it's already out.
And is that in the M12 or the M18?
M12.
M12. Do you prefer the M12 versus the M18?
For automotive work, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot more compact, easy to get to things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been pleasantly surprised with the power of the M12 stuff. That's why I was hesitant at first, but for automotive work, it's been fantastic. And I bought their 3/8 stubby impact, and that thing has been a game changer for brakes and all kinds of shit that I do, and I love that thing. I still like having the M18 around because I feel like that's still good for, what would I say, home project duties. So running a circular saw, running a drill, like if I'm going to be, screwing boards together on the deck or, whatever, I still kind of prefer M18 for the most part. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot bad to say about M12, and they have done a good job of focusing on that automotive niche there. And even though I've gotten rid of, because it is so good, I've gotten rid of about 90% of my air tools.
Yeah,
To be honest,
I haven't. The only thing I use air-wise or used air-wise, honestly, was my air hammer.
that's the one that I kept, and I actually don't have an air hammer. What I have is a rivet gun that I use as an air hammer, and a rivet gun works 5,000 times better than an air hammer as an air hammer. So if you want to go on eBay and find yourself a rivet gun, they're not very expensive, and you put the chuck end on that thing, and it will give you the finest control that you had for how you want to tap stuff. And when you go full throttle, it will break fucking concrete in half. That it has the finest, because when you're talking about a real air hammer, because I've had a bunch of them, they're basically big vibrators, right? They'll just sit there and they'll buzz and they'll vibrate. Mm-hmm. This thing is like cluck, cluck, cluck. If you're just light on the trigger, and it'll tap like that. And then if you go full force, it's like boom, 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 boom. I mean, it will fucking break shit. And I have broken every single ball joint out that I've wanted with one of those things. But the fact that I can also get a fine trigger, if I need to like just barely pry something off, I can just use it to tap real fine. I highly recommend those. Anybody who's like looking for an air hammer, I'm like, don't look for an air hammer, look for a rivet gun.
That makes sense. And like I said, air-wise, that's the only thing that I've actually got that I would need, short of air enough tires. But even there, you've got options, excuse me, that involve electric. Everybody's got an electric inflator at this point in time. And air-wise, the only other two things is plasma cutter. I've got a plasma cutter, but there again, I'm not doing anything with it. So
yeah, let's see here. Yeah, the rivet guns, man, they come in like 4X, 2X, 6X, all this other stuff, and it's just kind of a barrel length thing. But to you or any of the viewers, I would highly recommend grabbing one of those. You get one of those, you will never touch a regular air hammer ever again.
Rivet gun, and they can be on Amazon, eBay, etc.
I got mine off eBay, yeah, because what they're primarily used for, they get them used, is that they use them to rivet on airplanes, like all of the aluminum sheeting on the airplanes and stuff. They use those because they need the fine finesse control on working with that. And you can find them; they'll be used. But man, they yeah. I'll shoot you a link for one. They are freaking amazing.
And I'll add that to the description, as well as the description of Grant's channel, excuse me, as well. That way you can check out Grant's videos, and he's got a lot of cool stuff on there. He knows what he knows. He's very, very talented. He's always been that way. He went to school with my little brother, so I'm about 10 years older than Grant, even though I might look 20 years older than Grant, but
not anymore. Yeah.
Nah, I still got you beat. I got this gray with this one little strip like right here, and that's it. You still got, like right there, you got some dark. You're doing good. You're doing good.
Hanging in there. Trying to hang in there.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Grant, it's been fun. We've talked everything from Super Bowl to tools to tech. And it's been a blast. I really enjoyed having you on. I appreciate you making time to be on. I know kids, family, and you're an hour difference from me on the East Coast. So I greatly appreciate you. And anytime and every time you ever want to go on and chop it up, I'd love to have you. And I know the people that watch, they feel the same way.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Brother, anytime. And if you want to go to check out Grant's channel, not only will I put the description and the link, it's also, is it B?
GB. G-E-B-E-E. Yep.
G-E-E-B-E-E.
86. Yep.
86, yes. And like I said, you'll find a link to Grant's channel on my channel, and check out what he's got on there. Super smart. Feel free to ask questions to myself or Grant. If I don't have an answer, I know he will, especially when it comes down to the tech. He knows what he's talking about. But
All right.
Grant, is there anything that you'd like to add, my friend?
Nothing that I can think of. I'm thinking maybe if we come back on next time, I'll try to see if we can get the camera working so we can be a little bit mobile, and maybe we can check out some of this stuff that I either got in the garage or got having around, or my next project or something. Get some real involvement here. Sure. I don't think people want to hear me talk all the time.
Hey, I'm one of those people, so people are tuning in, and that's good. They're all going to be able to learn something and come out with a little bit of knowledge.
Yep.
That's all we can teach. But yeah, next week, let me know if that works for you. I'm pretty much free at any time of day, so I will be available as needed.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you, Grant. Thank you all for watching. What's that? What's GMoney socials? They want your socials.
My social security?
Here's my social security number.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah, I'll tell you twice.
You got the YouTube. I'm gonna GEEBEE86. That's the YouTube channel. So that's where you're primarily going to find. It's been a little bit slower and inactive than I'd like it to be, given the kids and the life and all that other stuff. But that's primarily where the videos are. Max has still kindly just shared some of those videos, and time permits, I will work on trying to get some more of those up. So we're just going to see what the demand is for whether it goes in the engine route, the educational route, or maybe some retro tech route.
I like it. And I'm thinking next week I will probably broadcast from the garage with some tools and other things that I can actually demonstrate. And if Grant's going to be in the garage, it'll be a garage type episode with tools and whatever else we've got in our garages.
Yeah, I've got some new John Deere stuff hooked up to my 318, so maybe we can show some of that off.
All right, I've got some new 4-volt Ryobi stuff that just came out that I haven't even unboxed yet. So,
okay, yeah, and then I'll shoot you that link for the for a nice rivet gun.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Grant. As always, love seeing you here. Love you like a brother. I greatly appreciate you taking time to be here. I appreciate you all watching and appreciate you to give us the opportunity to earn your viewership. I wish everybody nothing but the best, and God bless.
Have a good night.
Everybody, Grant says have a good night. I say the same.
There we go.